Hello, and welcome to the second video in the training series on the changes happening within the Healthy Data Systems Site Review website. If you watched the first video, then you know that a few plan representatives are working with Jeff Hobson, the developer of HDS, to complete an overhaul of the system. Some of the reasons for this overhaul are to make the system more user-friendly, provide additional fields that inform decisions, and fulfill all site review requirements as outlined by the Department of Healthcare Services. This video focuses on the Audit Scoring tab of HDS, specifically related to the FSR and MRR tools. The presentation goes over each of the fields and what they are used for. The previous video covered the Site Data tab of HDS, which has had some additional updates. The EMR type field was found to be redundant and has been replaced with the record type field. The record type field allows users to document whether a site has electronic records, paper charts, or both, which is defined as hybrid. The EMR system field is used to indicate which EMR program the site uses, such as NextGen or Epic. These two fields are also now located within the MRR audit scoring page that will be covered later in this video. The other change to the Site Data tab is the addition of fields for documenting that a provider site has been educated on a particular topic. The first field, Site Educated, is the date the education was conducted. Topic is what the site was educated on, and the Educator dropdown is for selecting the plan staff member who provided the education. Another change made to the Site Data tab is to separate out the physicians from the non-physician medical practitioners, or NPMPs. This change was prompted by plans beginning to put NPMPs into their databases because DHCS wants information on all providers, not just the physicians. The first slide talked about education fields and identifying plan staff as educators. This slide shows how to identify plan staff as educators and how to turn on or off the education fields on the Site Data tab. There are actually 3 drop-downs that require designating a position for a staff member so that that person's name appears in the drop-down. A plan's staff members that are reviewers, coordinators, and educators will not show up in those drop-downs without assigning them a position on the admin page. To make a staff person's name appear in these drop-downs, the plan's HDS administrator can select the staff member from the plan staff drop-down. Select from the position drop-down the appropriate position for that staff member. A reviewer is typically both a reviewer and an educator. A coordinator could also be an educator. For the person's name to appear in both the educator and reviewer drop-downs, select the position with both those choices. If you do not see a combination appropriate for your staff member, contact HDS to have the drop-down updated with additional options. For plans that choose not to use the education fields, the HDS administrator can turn them off using the Company Selections menu. On the Administrative tab, click on Company Selections and look for the row that says Educator Site. Click the radio button for No and click Submit to save the choice. The row of 3 fields on the Site Data tab will no longer appear. That sums up the changes made to the Site Data tab since the last video. The presentation will now cover the audit scoring pages. This is a view of the audit scoring page without going into a specific audit. It is one option for viewing audit history for a specific site. Another option is the View Data tab. It's important to note that whether this screen looks like this or not depends on whether the user has searched for a site on either the Site Data tab or the View Data tab first, before clicking on Audit Scoring. This screen shows a DHCS site ID, facility name, and address, and the history of audits for that site. Users navigate the HDS system using gray tabs across the top of the page. These tabs are the various sections of the HDS system. This video is focused on the Audit Scoring tab. Below those gray tabs is a bar that says Select Tool. Any tools added to an audit will display here, and this gray bar is where the user accesses those tools. The next row down shows the username and health plan along with that user's level of access in HDS. Enter Audit ID is a field for typing a specific audit ID or searching for one using the magnifying glass. This field only accepts audit IDs. Beyond that search field, the page shows the user that made the last update to the audit. Where it says History is a hyperlink that opens a new window that displays detailed information about changes made to the audit, including what, when, and who. The COM log is a feature that allows users to document correspondence and/or communication with the provider site, as well as other notes related to the audit. The scheduling log is similar to the COM log in look and function, but its purpose is to document communication with the site about scheduling an audit. Toward the top right of the screen is a box that encompasses next survey date. As the name of the field reflects, this is the date the next audit is due. Latest date of review indicates the last time an audit was conducted. Cap close date, if the prior review had a cap, the date the cap was closed. Audit log date shows when the shell was first created for this audit. Below the History button is information about this specific site and audit. Audit ID is an auto-generated number assigned to each separate audit, not each separate tool. Next is the DHCS site ID and the name and address of the site. The next row indicates which tools are included in this audit. Each audit ID can have only one FSR, but can have multiple MRRs. Other tools, such as PARs, can be added as well. Some other fields on the audit scoring page are Cert PDF, which is a document issued to a PCP site upon completion of a site review. Focused opens a window for a focused review summary. Full Interim opens a window that displays prior deficiencies with yes or no answers to indicate compliance between reviews. Some of these fields may be relocated as other system enhancements are made. As shown here, the FSR audit scoring page has a lot of fields. The next few slides will break the information down into sections and explain the fields in each section. Image 1 shows fields available for users to enter the number of staff identified at a provider site, as well as document whether their fire clearance is current. These fields are completely optional to use, but they cannot be turned off via company selection. Image 2 shows an example of the score sheet for the FSR tool and demonstrates where the data entered into the fields in image 1 appear on the score sheet. The latest version of the FSR tool requires this information on the score sheet, also known as the tool cover page, and users can now enter the data from the audit scoring page and it will populate on the score sheet automatically. For plans that do not wish to use these new fields, they can enter the information directly into the score sheet. To make the score sheet editable, click the Edit button in the top right-hand corner. After entering the information, click Submit and then click Print to exit edit mode. Data entered directly into the score sheet will automatically populate on the audit scoring page. The FSR audit scoring page appears after an audit ID has been created in HDS and the FSR tool has been added to that audit ID. For new sites, the user must manually create the audit using the Create Audit button at the very bottom of the site data page. The system will then prompt the user to choose which tool to add to the audit, such as the FSR tool and the MRR tool. As each tool is added to the audit scoring page for that tool becomes available. Plans may choose to customize the audit scoring page to add or remove fields by working directly with HDS. The placement of the fields are meant to follow the typical flow of an audit, starting with when the audit is due. Starting in the top left and going row by row, the fields are as follows. Site due date indicates the date the site review is due by. Depending on which plan did the last site review, this field may already have the date populated, or the user may need to fill in the due date. Ordered is a date field typically populated with a date 4 months before the due date. For periodic reviews, where your plan has the assignment, this date populates automatically. If the audit was manually created and the assignment is taken from another plan, you will have to fill it in, and it's the date you created the audit. The ordered date is intended to give the user time to contact the site, get the audit scheduled, prepare for the audit, etc. HP reviewed, that's the plan that's going to conduct the audit. Date of review, this is the date that the review actually occurs. Scheduled, this field is for documenting the intended date of the review. Reviewer 1 is the reviewer who conducted the FSR. If there was more than one reviewer, there are spaces for reviewer 2 and reviewer 3. Review type, there are several options available in this dropdown. The most common types of reviews are initial and periodic. Some plans utilize coordinators for their audits. This field lets the plan designate which coordinator assisted with the audit. There are spaces to identify 2 coordinators. CAP, this dropdown is used to identify what kind of CAP will be issued to the site based on the scores and nurse judgment. The options are no CAP, CE CAP only, FSR CAP only, and both FSR and CE CAP. Selecting an option from the dropdown will populate the appropriate CAP due date fields. There is logic built into HDS to populate the due dates according to the CAP timeline in the current all plan letter, or APL. CAP sent date, this field is for manually documenting the date the FSR CAP was given to the site. The next row has checkboxes used to indicate that a review was done virtually without going on site. There is also a box to indicate that follow-up on that virtual audit is needed. CE CAP due populates based on the date of review when using the dropdown. If users do not select a CE CAP from the dropdown, the date field remains empty unless the user enters a date. CAP due, this field populates with a due date when the CAP sent date is filled in. CE CAP received, this field is for documenting the date the CE CAP was received back from the site. CAP received is the date the FSR CAP was received back from the site. Educator, if a plan staff member conducted an education during the audit, they can document that person in this field. Refer back to the slide on designating plan staff as educators. CE CAP verification due. This field populates with a date 30 days from the date of review because the latest APL requires that critical element corrections be verified by the plan within 30 days of the audit. CAP closed is used to document when all corrections have been responded to by the site and verified by the reviewer. FSR CAP reviewer is a drop-down used to select which plan staff member reviewed and approved the CAP. CE CAP closed, this is the date for when the CE CAP has been responded to by the site and verified by the reviewer as acceptable. Switching from left to right briefly, CAP 60-day, CAP 90-day, membership freeze, and 120 drop date are fields added just to provide a visual on when those milestone dates occur. The 60, 90, and 120 dates fill in automatically after the CAP sent date is populated. Membership freeze is a health plan decision and is therefore not pre-populated. CAP extension is to fill in a new CAP due date when the site has asked for an extension on their open CAP. Some plans have multiple date fields to document a focused review was done. Other plans opted for 2 fields indicating a focused review was scheduled and a focused review was passed. P&O status is used to provide information on the status of the audit to either other departments within the health plan or other plans who need to know the status. On the View Data page, users can see whether the review is in progress, in review, complete, or no longer valid. The status field automatically populates with the type of pass the audit received. The options are exempted pass, conditional pass, and not pass, based on the total points and whether there are certain deficiencies. Additional options available in this dropdown include canceled, postponed, or terminated. Plans can choose internally how they intend to use these fields. Cert sent date is a field used to document the date the health plan sent the certificate to the site, signaling they passed their review. Interim due date populates automatically with a date that is the halfway point between the current and next review, which is typically an 18-month time frame. Next review in is a newer field that is a drop-down that lets the reviewer choose whether to return for the next review in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. The next survey date in the top right corner of the page is updated based on the selection in this drop-down. If there is nothing selected from the drop-down, the system will calculate the next survey date based on the score of the review. If the site failed the audit, it will put the next survey date at 1 year. If they passed the audit, it will put the next survey date at 3 years. Closed audit. This date field should fill in automatically when the CAPs are closed. Some plans do take advantage of a company selection feature that makes it to where that field will not automatically populate when the CAPs are closed. Some plans choose to do a focused review before closing their audit. So you can make that selection in company selections, whether you want that field to fill in automatically. Lastly, there is a notes field available for documenting things specific to this audit. Here are some important things to know about the fields on this page. Several of them are responsible for other functions within the system, and if not filled in, those other functions may not work right. For example, if there is a CAP due and the CAP close dates are not filled in, then the closed audit date will not populate. The closed audit field signals the system to create the shell or placeholder for the next audit. For reports such as the nurse assignment report, to show these future audits, the CAP closed and closed audit dates must be populated. So certain reports might not work right, and all of the sites you expect to see on a report might not appear if all of the necessary fields are not populated. A spot for listing site contacts is a new addition to the FSR audit scoring page. It's possible that the reviewer will be asked to send the CAP to more than one person at the site. Perhaps contact 1 will be the main person who has worked with the reviewer throughout the audit. Contact 2 might be someone at the site's corporate office who wants to be kept in the loop about the review. Typically, the contact person listed on the Site Data tab is going to be the primary person the reviewer works with. The Import checkbox pulls in the contact information from the Site Data tab, so it does not need to be retyped. Check the box and click Submit, and these fields will populate for contact 1. If you don't wish to pull in the same information as what's listed on site data, type in the information. Contact to must be entered manually and only needs to be used if there are multiple people who need to receive the cap. If you entered contact 1 or contact 2, they will appear on the MRR audit scoring page as well. If working with someone different for the MRR portion of the audit, just type over the information and click Submit. It will not change what is listed for the FSR. The next section pertains to verifying critical element corrections, which is a new requirement of the latest APL. This section allows for users to document 2 rounds of verification attempts. For each attempt, the user can document the following: the date they have scheduled to verify the corrections, whether the verification was conducted virtually or on-site, the date the verification occurred, whether or not all corrections were verified during that attempt, the health plan that did the verification, and the reviewer that did the verification. The reason for the plan verification field is that collaborating plans may ask plan partners to conduct the verification attempts. There may be another plan in closer proximity to a provider site who can do the verification and report back to the assigned plan. If another plan takes care of the verification, the reviewers will need to coordinate with each other how the information will be updated in HDS. If it takes more than 2 attempts to verify the corrections, plans may choose to use the COM log or an additional notes field to document additional attempt efforts. Lastly, there is a status drop-down below the rows of attempt fields. This field reflects on the View Data tab and allows the other plans and/or other departments to see the status of the verification. The options in this drop-down are in progress, complete, pending, or scheduled. The definitions of these statuses can be determined on a plan-by-plan basis. The last feature of this CE CAP verification section is the checklist. The number in parentheses is the number of critical element criteria awaiting verification. The blue text is a link that opens the checklist in a new window. Here you can see what opens when you click on the CE CAP verification checklist. It shows the CE criteria, yes/no answer buttons, and a comment box for each criteria. Please note, each update button must be clicked individually. There is no button for saving all the answers like within the tool. For each criteria, answer yes or no, make comments, and click Update to save them. The number in the link will update to the remaining number of criteria that are answered either no or are left blank. The user may choose to mark no and then comment why. Either way, the checklist will update with the quantity that does not reflect yes. HDS is designed to show the user when there are problems with an audit. This slide shows what the audit scoring page will look like when there are unanswered questions or the total number of points do not add up correctly. For example, there are 31 points possible in the Access and Safety section of the latest FSR tool. As displayed here, there are 27 yes points and 2 no points for a total of 29 points. The red X next to the 27 indicates that the yes, no, and NA columns do not add up to 31 points. The yellow diamond symbol with the exclamation mark indicates that there is at least one question within that section that does not have an answer. Once the issues within the tool are corrected, the scoring section of the audit scoring page should not display any red X's or yellow symbols. This slide shows an MRR audit scoring page. The fields are like the FSR page with just a few differences. There are no critical elements on a medical record review, so there are no date fields for that kind of cap. The next survey date is based on the date of the FSR, so there is no field for selecting when the next review is, like on the FSR page. The record type field was added because DHCS wants to know what kind of records the provider office has: paper charts, electronic, or a combination of the two, defined as hybrid. If the site uses an EMR, they want to know the name of the system. The EMR system dropdown is where the user selects which system the site uses, such as NextGen, Epic, or a variety of other EMRs that provider offices use. For scenarios where providers do not share records or utilize different types of charts, this is where adding an additional MRR tool will allow for documenting multiple record types or multiple EMRs. We'll go over this on the next slide. The MRR audit scoring page has a Contact 1 and Contact 2 section, just like the FSR. If the user entered names on the FSR, they should appear here as well. The section scores are also displayed similarly, and the same red X or yellow symbol appear if there are issues with the scoring or questions. The end of the audit scoring page shows the providers that work at the site. There is a company selection feature that allows this section to display just the MDs and DOs at a provider site, or include non-physician medical practitioners, should your plan have those providers in your system. In the company selections menu, the option is called PCP only. If you select yes, then your plan will only display MDs and DOs in this section. If you select no, because your plan considers NPs and PAs as PCPs, then all of your provider types will appear in this section. As mentioned on the last slide, there may be scenarios where multiple medical record tools are necessary. Here is an example scenario. A PCP office has Dr. Green and a few other providers who only see children and use the EMR Epic. The same PCP office also has Dr. Brown and a few other providers who only see adults and prefer to maintain paper charts. In this situation, Dr. Green and the other providers who see children would be audited on MRR 1. The user would update the audit scoring page to reflect a record type of electronic and the EMR system as Epic. In the providers section at the bottom, only Dr. Green and those providers who see children would have the boxes next to their names checked. Dr. Brown and the other providers who see adults would be audited on MRR 2. The audit scoring page would reflect a record type of paper, and the EMR system field would show no EMR. Only those providers who see adults would have the boxes checked next to their names. If you need to add other tools to this audit ID, such as a PARS or another MRR, this is where you would add it. Select the name of the tool from the drop-down and click Create Audit. Copy Audit is primarily used for PARS reviews, where an attestation that nothing has changed allows the user to copy the last PARS tool to the next audit ID. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video on the Audit Scoring tab in HDS. We hope it will help both new and seasoned users of HDS to navigate the system.